Hi, Kath. Thanks ever so much for joining us for the latest in the Diabetes Times Big Interview online series. So we're going to kick off with question one. What led you to specialising in psychosocial impact and management of diabetes?
Gosh, so this was back in the day when I was doing my master's degree at Southampton University, and we had to do a 10,000 word thesis project. And my project was a study into patient-professional communication that was being conducted at Portsmouth Adult Diabetes Centre. And I loved it. I just loved everything about it. It was so interesting. It's such a complex condition. It's so multifaceted, and there's so much that we can do as psychologists to really help in terms of healthcare professional burden and people living with diabetes, to kind of alleviate that burden and kind of like let life kind of take over again, rather than it all being about glycemic control. So yeah, it was my master's degree in psychology, health psychology at Southampton University back in the day.
Impressive. So that inspired your great career.
Yes, I think with diabetes, I think a lot of people, when you get into it, like people fall into it by accident, maybe. Not everybody kind of chooses to specialize in diabetes, and that was me. It's just I was interested in the topic, and I think once you just get sucked in, because it's just such a cool and fun and important area to work with, like really cool and fun people. So
Jolly good. So once you started working in diabetes care, what your specialities, what specialities started to emerge?
So I qualified as a health psychologist, registered with the Healthcare Professions Council, and as a practitioner psychologist when I finished my PhD. So my PhD was an exploration of quality of life issues associated with insulin pump therapy for children, adolescents and adults with type 1 diabetes. And that kind of really set me on a journey to work a lot in diabetes technologies. I specialize a lot in really cutting edge technologies, some of the decision support tools, some of the closed loop algorithms. We've worked a lot on pump therapy and continuous glucose monitors over the years. So technologies, I'm kind of known, I think, for technologies. What my specialties really are around psychosocial functioning and quality of life, and around condition and disease management, both in diabetes and in other health areas. But to really understand an individual's relationship with their health and help to minimize the burden of that, so that actually they can use most of their headspace to get on with the things that they want to do with their life. They want to enjoy family, friends, whatever that might be, but to really kind of identify what's difficult about disease management and kind of minimize that as much as we can.
Very good. So the next question: you have published more than 200 scientific peer-reviewed articles and lectured worldwide. We bumped into each other in Madrid, didn't we, before the world changed and COVID took over. What paper has had the greatest impact on frontline care?
Oh, gosh. So a few have been really impactful in different ways. Some work that we've done around depression and diabetes, and antidepressant medications as a potential risk factor for type 2 diabetes. That was hugely impactful when that came out. I wrote that with Professor Richard Holt and Professor Rob Pevler at Southampton University, and that was that gained a lot of interest. In terms of impact, so I guess you look at impact differently. Impact on the way that people receive care, or impact on the way that people view the care that is available, or what options are open to them, I guess is impactful in different ways. When we've been very lucky. I've published in the New England Journal of Medicine with some of our closed loop research, in the Lancet, in all of the diabetes journals. And every one of those articles has been impactful in a different way. So I think things like, so the depression and diabetes was very impactful from a media perspective, and it caused a lot of debate, which was really, really important. But other things we do, so for example, we developed this very brief injection technique assessment tool that people can answer a few very quick questions and then look at their answers into where they are on the grid to help them understand if their injection technique is okay. And even though that wasn't hugely impactful in terms of citations or you know, kind of the usual metrics, actually I think I like those sorts of articles because they're impactful in terms of helping people to think, well, if I'm carb counting okay and my bolus dosing is fine, why is it still not working? And it could be your injection technique. So that kind of stuff, you know.
Very practical.
Yeah, so we, you know, sometimes, you know, it's nice to publish in the big journals and you know, contribute to the scientific debate at a very high level, but actually it's equally important to be able to provide practical advice, practical information to help people just manage every day to support their patients in routine care day in, day out.
Very good point. You are an advisor to NICE. What have you advised them about?
Pediatric diabetes guidelines writing. I was an expert advisor during the writing of the pediatric guidelines. Yeah.
Very good. What about tell us about your current research priorities.
Gosh, we are doing a lot at the moment. I mean, as you know, COVID kind of brought everything to a grinding halt, and then it all started again, which is great. So we, again, are working with Richard Holt on a study to help improve glycemic control for people awaiting elective open heart surgery, cardiothoracic surgery. So that's a very exciting study that could be hugely impactful. We are running a randomized controlled trial currently, multi-center study into Spotlight, our preclinical assessments, which we'll maybe talk about a little bit later. We're also looking at, we're supporting a few of the guys in the States at different universities in the States around closed loop algorithms, decision support tools, and another kind of cutting edge tech research. So yeah, we're doing a lot across the board.
And tell us about another project you were involved in, the Rescue Collaborative Community.
The Rescue Collaborative Community is hugely, hugely important, and I am totally humbled and privileged that the FDA asked me to bring this together and to lead it. And I'm leading it with a brilliant colleague from the Barbara Davis Center, actually in Denver, a doctor called Sheila Majidi. So she's a medic. And what the goal is to reduce the prevalence of intended self-injury and suicide amongst people living with diabetes. Very, very disturbingly, we know the published literature, and we've contributed a lot to this literature ourselves, shows that the prevalence of suicide amongst people with diabetes is roughly double that from the general population. However, the very nature of these acts and the isolation and the loneliness and the people don't often share how they're feeling or their intentions. So we believe that actually it's a lot more common than double. We think it's closer to maybe 3 or 4 times as high. And what the FDA have asked us to do is to explore as an international collaboration. We're working with some of the most brilliant people in the world across academia, medicine, industry, across charities and advocacy groups. We have many people with diabetes on our community, and we're looking across different areas. So we're trying to improve identification and coding of events, which are notoriously difficult. If a paramedic attends a severe hypo, for example, unless there's an obvious note or there are concerns, you have no idea that could possibly be an attempted suicide. So we're trying to improve identification and coding. We are trying to improve education and awareness amongst healthcare professionals so that they're better able to identify signs and signposts very quickly for appropriate support. And we're trying to look at, and these are the kind of snazzy, so Rayhan Lal and Mark Breton, actually both in the States, one at Stanford, one at UVA, are looking at if it's possible to use device data to identify risk factors to see if somebody is at risk, and to try and kind of use diabetes tech. Yeah, it's really cool to see if it's possible to help people at a much earlier stage.
Developing a very clever, sophisticated algorithm that flags warning signs.
Yeah, exactly. So things like, for example, if people are priming their line, you know, sometimes you'd need like 12 units to prime from the insulin pump to the cannula, for example, or however many, but say around 12 for the device I'm thinking of. You know, if somebody's priming 50 units, then it could be that they've found an air bubble in the tube and they have to continue to prime until it's clear, obviously, or it could be something more worrying. So I mean, that's kind of an extreme example, but this kind of thing, you know, to see if it's possible to identify interpersonal and more kind of group behaviors that might help us identify and support people more quickly. So yeah, so it's a really, it's so important, and I am, like I say, I'm truly privileged. Everybody that I asked to join the committee, they all immediately said yes. They've all been very engaged across the whole key stakeholder group, and if anybody is interested in getting involved and learning more about it, then please do reach out to me, and I'd be very happy to talk to them about it.
Jolly, well, we can put your contact details or your website on the link with this story. So tell us about Spotlight AQ, the user-friendly, pragmatic tools that helps people with diabetes, engage people with diabetes and set the scene for the consultation. Yeah,
so this is something we've been working on for a few years, and it's been a very co-designed, iterative process with us and key stakeholders to develop a preclinical assessment that is holistic to get at the really important factors that impact diabetes control, but don't necessarily have to be diabetes related, because as we know, life gets in the way. So the challenge was to be holistic, but very brief. And we know we use a lot of psychosocial measures that are validated and reliable, like the Inspire measures that we use for closed loop systems that we developed. And they're all very useful, but they're necessarily blunt instruments because you're administering them to hundreds and often thousands of people. So you lose the nuance. But what we wanted to do was to be able to do this holistic preclinical assessment that people could fill in within a week or a few days of them coming to their routine outpatient appointment, that would really help them to identify and articulate their priority concerns to address for their self-management of their diabetes at that appointment, to get the best from that appointment, and to help healthcare professionals better understand their patient priority concerns so they can better meet them. Because we know that you know, the one thing that is common to every person with diabetes, it doesn't matter which type of diabetes you have, what therapy you're on, duration, complications, none of it. The one thing everybody has in common is they all should have the opportunity to engage with a healthcare professional regularly to support their self-management. But we know that routine care consultations can be very frustrating for both parties. And there's a whole world of evidence that shows that healthcare professionals often will interrupt their patients within 11 seconds of them starting to describe the problem that they've come to talk about. So if you can't actually get out what you're trying to say, or, you know, it's an artificial, uncomfortable environment. You know, we go to the hospital, we go to the clinic, and that kind of automatically focuses us in on glycemic control. But that's HbA1c is not a priority particularly, that's an outcome. The priority is how do we address what you need to address to help you self-manage your diabetes to the best of your ability in the context of your life. And that's what Spotlight does, is a platform, a web-based platform. And we're doing an audio and a colour version as well, and it'll be translated into different languages. But our RCT currently is to assess clinical and cost effectiveness. Our pilot studies, our feasibility studies have been really, really positive. It works very, very well. And we have different pre-clinic assessments for adults with type 1 diabetes, adults with type 2 diabetes, adults with pre-diabetes, children with diabetes. Doesn't matter if it's type 1 or type 2. We know many, many more children are being diagnosed with type 2 diabetes now. But for children, often, the priority concerns are less about glycemic control and more about life. And the fifth one is for parents of children with diabetes, because we know that diabetes is a family condition and it needs the input and the understanding and the support of all parties. So that's what it is, basically. It's a tool predominantly for healthcare professionals who will then send a link to their patients a few days before they come to clinic, so that patients can fill it in, few questions. It's very, very quick, and really kind of focus the time that you get with your healthcare professional to the very best of that it can possibly be.
Time is precious.
Yeah, and you get so little time in a routine consultation, you know.
So if anybody's interested in rolling out Spotlight AQ, how do they go about it?
Oh, they can contact us directly if they're interested in taking part in some real-world data collection, trying it, see what they think. Go to our website, which is spotlightconsultations.com, or they can contact my colleague, Ryan, at spotlightconsultations.com, and reach out to him directly, and he will be able to answer any questions, send you a login to the platform, and set you up.
Jolly good. And haven't you got a webinar series?
We do. We are just currently finalising our CPD accreditation for we're running 5 webinars in the first instance, 1 hour times 5, 3 speakers per hour, and we are covering a really broad range of psychosocial aspects of diabetes. How can we help people better, more effectively? How can we understand more about psychosocial aspects of diabetes so that we're able to provide the best care possible in a standardized way to reduce inequalities, reduce healthcare professional bias, and really kind of like meet that lived experience kind of demand.
So people can find out more about the webinars through your social media accounts, I guess.
Yes, they can. We'll be advertising those in the next few weeks. We expect to hear from the CPD imminently. They've emailed today, so it should literally be in a few days now. And as soon as we get the final sign off from the CPD accreditation authority, then we'll be advertising all of them and the dates and the times. And if you can't make a date or time but you're interested, then we're going to host them all on our website afterwards, so you can go and have a look then if you'd like to.
Jolly good. So on to the next question. What one piece of advice would you give to diabetes teams?
One piece of advice I would give to a diabetes team is never think you know. You don't. It's people's motivations, people's challenges, people's facilitators, barriers, these kind of things to engagement. They're so different. We're all so unique, which is what makes the world fabulous, you know. And sometimes when you think you've seen it all before, you've heard it all before, actually you haven't. And never think you know. Always ask. You know, the most powerful question I think ever is, how can I help you? And when people respond to that and they're not sure because they're overwhelmed, then, you know, another question could be is, tell me what you're struggling with. Tell me what you find hardest. Let's start with how I can help you with something that you might be finding difficult. But yeah, you know, you run busy clinics all the time, and it helps doctors particularly. They don't receive very much training in psychological aspects of diabetes, but it's such a psychological condition. To have to relentlessly self-manage every day for the rest of your life. So it can be a little bit daunting as a doctor to ask a psychological question and not feel confident being able to provide support. But there's so much evidence-based, theory-driven support out there that you don't have to know all the answers as a doctor. You just need to be able to signpost to some really good resources. And that's kind of what with Spotlight, what we've done as well is, for the priority concerns that people identify on the doctor's portal, there's a whole ton of resources that they can signpost to their patients about how to get support for any social aspect or psychological aspect that might be difficult. So yeah, so I think that would be my biggest piece of advice ever for anybody is, please just, you don't assume that you know, because you don't know what's behind what's happening. Excellent
advice. Moving on to, what is your greatest achievement in diabetes care?
Do you know, I worked with the most brilliant team, again with the FDA actually. So Professor Corey Hood, Professor Diana Naranjo, Laurie Lafell, myself and Jill Weisberg-Benchel, we as a group, we developed the Inspire psychosocial measures. They're questionnaires to assess expectations and experience of closed loop systems, artificial automated insulin dosing systems. And we did an enormous amount of qualitative work to really make sure we got it right. And then we submitted this entire portfolio, this huge piece of work with the measures finally to the FDA for MDTT approval qualification, and we were successful. And I think that for me is probably the thing I'm most proud of the team and the outcome and that qualification, because I think it really kind of signaled the kind of parity between biomedical outcomes and psychological outcomes finally being on the same level and being recognized as such by the FDA. I think was hugely important. And I think that psychological research is rigorous, it is robust, and I think that we have responsibility as psychologists to prove that to the kind of wider medical community. So I think that MDTT qualification was the thing I was most proud of, because I know how hard my team worked and how brilliant they all were, and and I'm so grateful to all of the hundreds of people with diabetes who worked with us on that project, because I really feel that they made it what it was, and we were able to make the outcome questionnaires really reflect the things that are important to people. So yeah, probably that.
Impressive stuff. Penultimate question, talk us through a day in the life of Kath Barnard Kelly.
Oh gosh, so we work a lot. So I mentor some early career researchers. So I try and touch base with the people that I'm mentoring regularly, so to ensure that they're okay and that they understand everything, they're getting on all right, because I know that it can be quite intimidating to have to ask the prof if you've got a question. So I always try and reach out to them. I'm involved in a lot of research at the moment, so I check in on my clinical trials to make sure everything's okay. We're writing quite a lot. We've got some articles that we've been writing up from other research, so that's taken up quite a lot of time. And yeah, so yeah, generally I'll get up, I'll feed the baby and come to work, and yeah, we'll be here. We work quite long hours, but it's great. I've got the best job in the world. I am the luckiest person on earth.
And how do you relax? What do you do in your spare time? Final question.
So I've just bought one of those whizzy treadmills. that you get like a personal trainer, big screen with a personal trainer, and the treadmill gets faster and slower and goes up and down as they go on a tour around wherever, like the beach in Portugal or something. So that's how I spend all my spare time at the moment, on this treadmill. It's great. It's just, yeah, the best thing I've ever bought. So yeah, on my treadmill.
Very cool, Kath. Thanks ever so much for your time. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Ollie. It's lovely to see you. Thank you.
Likewise. Take care.